Welcome back to the Talk with AVC. Now we're going into college football. And this was kind of a quieter week. There's not a ton to talk about, but I will talk about a few things. We'll start with Ohio State. They finally won a real game. They beat Michigan State. And when I say a real game, don't go crazy on me about this, but in college football, there's so many games where big teams play these teams you've never even heard of, and they blow them out by like 40 points. What do you learn from that? You don't learn anything from that. You don't. There's nothing to learn from that. I finally learned some stuff about Ohio State from this week versus Michigan State, and you know what? I can be a believer in Ohio State. I think they're a pretty good team. I can believe that. I still hold on to my opinion that I believe Wisconsin's the best team in the Big Ten, but Ohio State is making a believer out of me. I want to see them against Michigan. I want to see them against Wisconsin before I put them in the college football playoffs. But they're a realistic contender. You know, they have a good defense. Chase Young is a beast. Justin Fields played solid. He didn't play the ridiculousness that he had played in the other games, but he played solid. And you know what? Beat a team like Michigan State that against rivals is always really, I want to say, stinging. And then you beat them convincingly in the second quarter. That was really when Ohio State took over the game. They put up all those points in the second quarter, and they made a real believer out of me. You know, Justin Fields threw his first pick, but J.K. Dobbins had a great game. They made a believer out of me. That's all I can really say about that. We're going to move on to the next thing here. Is Florida legit? Florida lost their quarterback, Andrew Franks, a couple weeks ago. However, they still are undefeated, and they've beaten some quality opponents, including they just beat Auburn this past week. Now, this week they have LSU. I don't want to say I won't call them legit till I see them play LSU because that's kind of a cop-out. I mean, anybody can kind of say that. I think their defense is legit. I really think their defense is legit. Is their offense good enough to win any of these really big games? I'm not sure, but it's nice to see Florida back in the top 10 picture. I honestly think that's really nice to see. I do think this will be one of the more exciting games to watch. You don't get a lot of these 5v7 games throughout the year, and I think it's great. It's really cool to watch if you're a college football fan. All right, we're going to move on to the next thing here, which I've kind of dreaded talking about this, but we're going to talk about it really quick, is California just passed a thing recently basically allowing the colleges to pay athletes instead of just directly, not so much directly scholarshiping them, but to give them profits of merchandise and things like that. Basically let them profit off what they do in college. Anyone knows me, I'm not a fan of this. I'm not. Some people may really like it, especially college athletes. I think it's quite honestly ridiculous. I don't see the reason for it. You know, I'm not going to say the life of a college athlete is easy because I know it's not. I know people who are college athletes, even at D1 schools. I know it's not easy. But I also know people who go play college athletics who don't care about making money off it. Look, not some of the guys who maybe are going to be real superstars and go to the NFL are going to maybe want that extra profit. But some of these other guys, really? I mean, should you be focused on making your own brand or should you be focused on your team, your school? I think if you want a real detail, in my opinion, I was always a huge Tim Tebow fan. I'm not a Florida fan. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I always loved Tim Tebow. And he did a take recently on ESPN First Take. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I think it pretty much spells out my point, most of my point of view. What should come first is your team, your school. That's what you should be valuing, not, we lost. But I had a good game this weekend. You know, I'm going to generate a little revenue stream from that. Why are you worrying about that in college? That's not what college athletics is for. It's not what it's supposed to be about. Can the school profit off it? Yes, the school has to profit off it. It's a business like anything else. You think those humongous athletic stadiums and all their amazing equipment pays for itself? Where they have to make money somewhere. And yes, they make money on tuition, but that's for the rest of the school. They have to make money specifically for the athletics somewhere. And yes, they draw. That's why college football draws so many more fans than the NFL. That's why those stadiums are enormous. It's because the fans, the players, it's supposed to be that you value your team, your community. It's a real, everybody is a part of that. It's not just jumping around from bandwagon to another, just jumping around for the money. And that's what this is, I feel like, unfortunately, is going to lead to, is just players jumping around to whoever offers them the most money. If you want that, make the NFL. That's not what college is for. I find it quite honestly ridiculous. And that's really the most I'm going to say on it. Again, if you haven't seen that Tim Tebow take on First Take, watch it. I think it's pretty clear, especially from a guy who was a real star in college. He had one of the most highest selling jerseys, and he didn't want to make a dime off it. Just go watch it if you haven't. It's really good. All right, so moving off that, we're just going to have a quick analysis here of the top 10 and games coming up this week. So the top 10 right now didn't change much, except for Georgia and Ohio State now being tied for third. The reason for that is this. It is not because Ohio State beat Michigan State. That is not the reason this happened. It's because Georgia got slightly challenged by Tennessee. That's why this happened. And Ohio State beat Michigan State. Those two things together is the reason why we have a tie at number 3 right now. If I had to pick the better team out of these two, I'd go with Georgia. I think, quite honestly, Georgia's proven the most. They've proven they can be dominant. They've proven they can win close games, which none of the rest of these top 4 teams have shown. Personally, if it was my rankings, I would have Ohio State at 4 as of right now. Florida's up at 7, Wisconsin at 8, Notre Dame 10, Notre Dame 9, Penn State 10, Oklahoma 6, and LSU 5. I don't know if I'd really change that much about that. I would probably have Wisconsin and Florida above Oklahoma. I would have Oklahoma at 8. The reason being, again, who have they played? They've played nobody. They have their one true test of the season this week against Texas. That's their only true test this entire season. They play no big name teams. They play no team that really says, oh, maybe they could actually give them a run for their money. This is going to be, this week versus Texas is going to be a shootout game, and somebody's going to win by either about 7 or 14, and we're really going to see. I'm not going to change my opinion too much on Oklahoma if they win against Texas, unless they really win convincingly. If their defense shows up versus Texas, then they'll make a believer out of me. But if it's like a 45-36 game, it's not changing a single opinion I have about Oklahoma. I don't think you can put them in the same category as some of these other teams. Honestly, I think if you put Oklahoma against teams like Florida, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, I think they lose, quite honestly. I don't think they can beat these teams with really good defenses. I don't. So we'll move Oklahoma. I don't specifically have a problem with Oklahoma. I have a problem with how they're perceived. That's the real. I'm sorry if anybody's an Oklahoma fan, but that's the case. Why didn't Jalen Hurts do this at Alabama? Because he had to play in the SEC. That's why. And as far as the teams out of the top 10, nobody there is really saying they should really be in. Maybe Texas if they win this week. Other than that, I don't really see anyone outside the top 10 that deserving being in. Got some interesting matchups this week. Obviously, we had the Florida LSU and the Texas Oklahoma. Those are probably the 2 best games this week. But we've got some other interesting ones. Alabama and Texas A&M is always an interesting game. Alabama pretty much always wins, but it's always an interesting game. It's always interesting to watch. Iowa plays Penn State. Now, Iowa lost to Michigan last week in one of the strangest college football games I have ever watched. I don't think I've seen a score of a college football game stay at 10-3 as long as I've seen that game. Wow, that was weird. Both teams really just tried to give the other the game. It was good. It was good that Michigan got the win, though. I want to almost credit the 2 defenses, but that would be, I think, giving the quarterbacks on both sides a little too much credit. But you know what? They played solid games, and Michigan getting back in the win column is good for them. Harbaugh is basically coaching for his job right now. Iowa needs to kind of prove their relevance sooner rather than later. I think they're starting to lose a little of their kind of mid-pack, like 15-ish luster. They don't seem to really be dominating teams the way they should, and they don't win games they should win. That's kind of always the thing with Iowa. Notre Dame plays USC this week. If you've never watched a Notre Dame USC game, I suggest you do. They're always very entertaining and stressful if you're a Notre Dame fan. You know what? Even depending on how the teams are, I think Notre Dame I think Notre Dame's going to take this year. I don't think there's really much debate on that. But it's usually always messy games. It's going to be a weirdly scoring game, especially in the first half. It's going to be close. That's just kind of always how it is in these games. It's a rivalry game. Rivalry games, as I've said, are always a little different because teams know how to play each other better. Like, again, you look at the UNC Clemson game. They play each other every year. They know how to play each other. USC, Notre Dame, even though they're not in a conference together because Notre Dame is an independent, they play each other every year. They're as close to they're really big rivals, obviously, and it's always entertaining to watch. Just a few other standout things from college football. I don't really see much that was crazy to me this week. I think we're starting to get a little bit of a better idea about which quarterbacks you should really be looking at to make the next leap to the NFL. I think Jake Fromm is legit. I think Herbert is legit. I never trust Alabama quarterbacks, but Tua looks pretty good. I really like Jerry Jeudy from Alabama. I think he's going to be a beast in the NFL. But, I mean, as far as that goes, that's kind of just how it is. I mean, so college football this week, it should be exciting. There's more matchups this week that you'll actually want to watch, and it should be a fun week of college football. Thank you very much for watching this segment of the Talk with AVC. Up next, we have our NFL segment. We've got a lot to talk about in that one because this was a weird week. Thank you guys very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next segment.